Welcome back to another episode of Maps Are Dead with Mike D. I have my friend David Merritt with me today. Dave is the COO of Unreal, but Dave also has made some navigation in the last 12 months that I was like, when he offered to be on this podcast, I was super excited to get a chance to connect and talk. So, Dave, thanks for squeezing me in on a very busy Friday for you.
Yeah, good to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
When did you get? And you joined Unreal. And by the way, Unreal Clothing. Give us the pitch line because I'm very familiar with the Unreal. Like you guys are a big local brand name success. This local clothing company made good, kind of sports everywhere and NFL and different work. But how would you guys describe yourselves there at Unreal Clothing?
Yeah, we're an athleisure brand, but we're an athlete-focused athleisure brand. We're not a beach brand. We're not a yoga brand. We are athlete forward. So we, with that kind of spin, we end up doing a lot of collaborations with sports teams, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, all of them, and really focus on the athlete. But a big part of our mantra is everybody can be an athlete. It doesn't matter if you're
Nice.
competing on the field or off the field or at home, wherever you are, you can be an athlete. And so we design clothes that hopefully help you
Nice.
be confident wherever you are.
Nice. Yeah, and I love so if you have a favorite sports team, especially the NFL, you might find their tag and not even realize it. Like they make some of the most interesting, unique. You guys have done some really interesting campaigns with different teams, not just the Vikings and others. So I kind of love your stuff. So UNRL, go check them out there. Um, Dave, but so I wrote up your strengths teams and on the board behind me, so they're kind of over there. And that's still you, right? Communication, competition, achiever, relator, woo. Does that sound accurate still?
For me, yeah.
So that's still you. So, but here's the thing. So, when I first met you, we met a number of years ago. We've had mutual friends, and we both live in the Twin Cities. You were a lawyer by trade, and still are a lawyer. You don't stop being a lawyer because you change jobs. But tell me about your previous career before becoming COO of Unreal, because what I'd love to know is how you go from there to here. So, what did you do before Unreal?
Yeah, it's not a normal career path for sure. So I was a brand and advertising lawyer for 12 or 13 years, working at a big corporate law firm. Most of my clients were large corporations that make products, and so I was really
Hmm.
familiar with kind of a certain part of this space, but certainly not other elements. And so I spent, like I said, I spent a decade or more litigating, so fighting about advertising and brands for big companies. And one of the things I loved to do um, when I was at my law firm was help smaller companies. Right, I had a really great practice, a lot of awesome clients, and occasionally a smaller brand would come along and need assistance, and our rates were pretty high, and so usually I would just say, sure, I'll help you on the side and bring you on as a client, but not really bill my time. I can say that now that I'm not at the firm anymore.
Yeah,
Uh, and Michael Jordan, Unreal's founder, was one of them. Not the
mm.
Michael Jordan, a different Michael Jordan.
The
Um,
logo one, of the
yeah, he called right out of college. Said, "Hey,
yeah,
we didn't know each other.
sure.
Our dads knew each other. His dad knew I was a lawyer, and he said, "Hey, I want to start a clothing brand. I want to call it Unreal. Uh, can you help me?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Sure." And I had no thought that this would ever be a successful business because it's such a tough industry.
Yeah.
Uh, but big credit to Michael. Fast forward 12 years, and it's been a rocket ship and really fun to watch from the outside. And
Yeah.
um,
Did you always know law? So, I mean, to even back up a little bit more, was it, I mean, how did you choose law? Because this whole conversation, right? The point of this podcast is like learning to navigate. And so, on one level, you navigated very traditional path in some ways. Go to school, go to grad school, lawyer. But even that, did you know you wanted to be because in litigation, but then you're actually in brand and marketing. Like that was a very specific niche before you made a big shift. How was that process for you? Did you always know this is what you wanted? That being a lawyer and being at the firm prior to this, was that like, yeah, that was what I was going to do. And I knew it from the time I was 15. It was the thing. How did you come to that conclusion right away or in those early days?
yeah, no, I didn't. I actually wanted to be a politician,
Nice.
and I worked in. So I was a political science major and a comm minor, which sorry for all of those of you out there who also did that. It's mostly useless. Um, and I worked for a politician my junior year of college, and
Hmm.
I absolutely hated it. But at that point, I'm kind of pot committed to the degree.
Yeah.
And then, so what else can someone with that degree do as a professional? And so I thought, I'm going to try and go to law school.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to do really well on the LSAT and got into some really great schools, went out east for school. And um, I'm conservative by nature, most lawyers
Yeah.
are. And so seeing like, oh, this is a career path that will, likely lead to a reasonable income and allow me to have
hmm
stability in my future family, I just kind of pursued it with everything I had.
When you hit the politician, and you have to like tell me who the politician was, but when you think about that, when because you have communication, always I ask, if you have communication in your profile, I have that as well. Part of what's key in communication is not about speaking, although it can be. It's about creating understanding, helping others understand complicated things, helping others understand and change how they see and think. When you're working for the politician, what was the awareness of you're like, man, I hate this? Was it, man, was it disconnect? Was it the actual work of it? You're like, this isn't great. Or the impact? When you think through what made you shift out of this kind of childhood dream that I now have shifted to a grown up dream, which you did, what was it that kind of snapped for you?
Yeah, it was, you kind of hit it. It was very practical. It
Mm,
was realizing that regardless of what the politician I was working for, so I was working for a governor, okay, so the executive of
mhm.
the state, um, I thought he was a good guy. I thought he had good ideas. It didn't really matter. And so and to watch the process of inefficiency and banging your head against the wall, and
Mhm.
regardless of how well you communicate, regardless of how good your idea is, it's only going to ever be so good as is kind of what you're able to negotiate. And that
Mhm.
often led to a watered down version of something that was halfway decent from both
Yeah.
sides that turned into something that wasn't good at all. And so I hated
Mm.
that. I just hated
Yeah.
the, it was impractical. The impact did not feel significant. And I couldn't see myself living that life for any real.
Does Does that because what comes up for me is even with competition in your profile, competition. I've called this out on a podcast. Competition is a theme that statistically, out of the global population of like 31 million people who've taken Clifton Strengths, competition drops to like 15th on average. High performing athletes. It's very competitive spaces. I have a white paper about to come out. This will hopefully be published by the end of this year on an analysis, and we found that one of the things you find in NCAA professional sports and Olympics is that competition is top five. So you have competition there too. The ambiguity of a win or success in that setting. How much is that something that is? Because that's what I hear you describing is like we're clear on how we want to win. We want to create a program that does X and makes this community safer, this county safer. But you're not going to get that. Does that sound resonate with you?
For sure, because even a win wasn't really a win at the end of the day.
Mm.
Because if you got something finally through, which is like
Yeah.
it was a tiny percentage that actually made it to do anything, it
Right.
was such a different version of what a win actually looked like when you started out that it didn't even feel like a win at that point. So
Yeah.
nailed it. There was
Yeah.
competitive side of me was even success wasn't a win, and if I have no avenue to win anything here,
Yeah.
that's brutal.
Yeah, a measurement because that's the one thing too. So for people who are navigating it, and we're talking about folks navigating their life, if competition is there, knowing what the trade-offs are, knowing what those prices are that you're going to pay, and finding a way to get that has to be part of the process. Which is interesting because it serves you really well in known environments, but can be difficult if you're stepping into something where how the keeping score isn't clear yet.
Yeah.
Like what's a win look like in those different scenarios? And so you step into and you excelled at the firm like you're a partner, like it wasn't like you were just an associate who's now shifted off to go to work for a clothing company. You were a partner, right? I mean, that was you've been there, you were there a long time.
I was there a long time. Out of my starting class of about 30, I was the only person left. So we big, top
Yeah.
100 law firm in the world, $1 billion budget sort of thing. So I made partner. So most people would have looked at what I did, and not only did I make partner, but my practice was growing and thriving. When I told people I was leaving, management, et cetera, until I explained why, most of them
Yeah.
thought out of my mind, right? Why
Yeah.
why would you work that hard? Why would you dedicate so much of your life to something and leave when it's kind of at the beginning of the exponential curve up?
Yeah.
Um, and there are a lot of different answers to that. But yeah, it was an interesting time to leave for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, when you think about that, because I mean, I think to kind of unpack a little bit of the process, because it's different. It's you're 7 months, and you've been with Unreal for 7+ months now, and the decision was in process before, right? 'Cause there's things you have to go through to make that call and to decide. So it's been over a year now since you began that process. Even before that, was there? Because here's the thing: you're young. You and your talented, brilliant wife both have very successful careers. You have a number of children, young. They're from very young, toddler age up to like that rambunctious boy stage, right?
Yep.
So you got a lot of life in those spaces. You're in that place. Was there any hint of change before? Because you got part. I mean, you're not 50 making partner,
Yeah.
right? Like you guys achieved and won. You're last man standing, literally out of your class early. That moment, we talk a lot when it comes to vision that people operate on this model. If I do the right thing, I'll have the right result and then I'll be something. But they don't realize there's a whole thing called gold medal fatigue or gold medal letdown, where after you achieve a gold medal at the Olympics, athletes will be like, okay, now what? Like the number of athletes get another gold medal and then you feel the same way. It's called gold medal depression. It's a very
Yeah.
specific thing. I'm not saying you had gold medal depression, but was Unreal just so compelling, or was there even a season before that where your brain's going, I think I need to navigate different, because navigating to still just be a litigator is different. Is there moments you started to realize you're asking yourself different questions about what you wanted?
Yeah, I told myself, I told my wife, fiance at the time, that look, I'm going to do this big law thing for a couple of years, pay off my law school debt, and then move on because it's a grind. Um, Turns out it's not really in my nature to quit on stuff, and so I did a little longer than anticipated,
Yeah.
but there was always something that was a little discontented.
Hmm.
I was a little discontent, and the turning point was actually a conversation with Sarah. The Unreal opportunity was in front of me, and I was still questioning it. And Michael and I had been going back and forth for months. And Sarah asked me the question, look, you're 65 years old, you retired from your law practice, we've got a second home in South Carolina, we paid for our 4 kids to go to college, we're super comfortable. You look back on your career and your life, how do you feel? And I said, I'm disappointed. And that was really the conversation that provided extreme clarity that I had to move.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
What your wife did there is one of the things we talk about, which is um, when it comes, because deciding what lane of traffic is one thing. Okay, how do I solve the problem in front of me? We're dealing with these challenges. This path's faster. But navigating, am I going in the right direction? Requires something that only we find perspective of time can do.
hmm,
So Sarah zooming out 25 years or whatever plus and going, okay, 25 years from now, what would you want? I think that's a key piece of that, is that it's different between a missed basket doesn't matter as much in the course of playing a tournament or playing your entire career as a professional NBA player or whatever that would be. And so to pull that back, is that something? And the reason why I bring that up, especially with the relator, who do you have people in your life that you're like, these are my perspective people?
yeah, I do. And frankly, you've been one of them over the years. Matt Brew, our mutual friend, is,
Yeah.
is one of
Yeah.
them. My dad is really one of them, and then
Hmm.
Sarah, my wife.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think I always kind of had a sense and a perspective that this probably wasn't the end for me professionally.
Yeah.
Um, but the idea of stopping short of achieving the goal, the idea of leaving what was a very straightforward professional path
Yeah.
with 4 kids, 7 and under, a wife who we've talked every year for the last decade, whether she was going to keep working or not,
Yeah.
and wanting to be able to still provide that freedom if she wanted. It kind of kept me locked
Yeah.
until kind of the thought of actually leaving became real. And then those conversations about perspective and time and what I want in the future and what God has for me in the future really
Hmm.
started to shift.
Yeah. Because one of the things that's always interesting to me is that competition typically as a theme when it comes to navigating life pre-25, it becomes about things, I think I could be great at this thing in a way that's going to be recognized. And so they step into things that they're like, oh, and even as you discover pretty young, oh, this politics thing, no, but I can be great here, and I step into it. But what's interesting is that over time, I find that as people age to maturity, start breaking 30s, is that competition can start to bite us in that competition likes to win, which means they're driven. They also, though, don't like to play games they don't think they can win.
Hmm.
And so the cost of things ends up being different. So what ends up happening is you're going, okay, wait. This is so on one level, the perspective of wait, this is going to cost me, and I want to do more things that have impact. But also going, I think I've talked about this before in other calls. I've done USA Triathlon is a client of mine over the years, the development program. And one of the development places they wanted to step into was inviting NCAA Division I runners to become triathletes by teaching them to bike and swim. Going, because it's the run at the end, right? That's the whole thing. But I'm watching some of these athletes struggle because they can swim, but struggle with being great on swimming or biking. And I had one say to me, Mike, do you realize I haven't learned a sport in 18 years? I started running when I was 6 or whatever, and now I'm 22. I've graduated from Iowa State or whatever, and that ability to be a learner, a new thing, like that takes a lot of courage. Were you aware of that learning curve for yourself? As you're like, I'm in a new role. I've never been a COO. Brand, the business, but you've never been COO of a clothing company.
Yeah, it was terrifying, and there was a period in the first month or two where I wondered, like, what is
What
this?
have I done?
Why did I do this? And a huge part of it was that, right? I was an expert at my.
Hmm.
There were very few questions a client could just call me out of the blue with that I wouldn't be able to answer like that, right? Got it. And now I'm entering a space where in some departments, supply chain, for example, the interns know more than I do, right?
Yeah.
And that is a really, really weird and daunting place to be as someone who has gotten so accustomed to being an expert at something.
Yeah.
Very humbling, and scary and tiring. And I've turned the corner from terrified and intimidated to it's fun. I've accepted the fact and been
You're like, it's
open
okay.
and been open about the reality that I don't
Yeah.
know all of this stuff. And now I'm learning it, and I'm learning a lot more regularly than I was at the end of my law career when I kind of had to become that expert. I was still learning some, but not
Hmm.
nearly the volume or frequency with which I'm learning now, and that's become fun.
I think because that's the magic too, especially with competition and achiever, is figuring out a way to redefine what a win looks like. Is that taking that back? Because how do you navigate that, Dave? Because I think, and I think it's a process. Obviously, it's probably in process for all of us. It's when we are young and we have family who cares about us, and we have our faith in our community, and I grew up in the same kind of community as you did, faith tradition too, where want to understand our purposes and taking wise counsel from people in our lives. And so there comes a space where we go, yep, we kind of choose the game we're going to play. So going to business, others in education, others into ministry or causes and things like that, and you kind of run that. But then coming to a place where you have to kind of decide that you're the judge that matters.
Hmm.
You're the referee that matters. You're the scoreboard. Learning to trust yourself of going, if I say this is a win, it's a win because it's between me and God, me and myself, me and my wife. For you in that setting, how do you find that process of trusting yourself when you're doing things? Because I have to believe that some people were like, besides just your partners, or like, Dave, what are you thinking? Like, how do you find, was it the courage of that partner? Like, you know what? Sarah's asking the right questions and my trusted relationships matter. What are you doing to even, because it won't be the last time, right? You're going to make other choices that others won't necessarily agree with. But what have you learned about trusting yourself as the only competition measure that matters?
Hmm. It's a good question. I don't know that I fully trust only myself, right? So I think
Sure.
now that being said, the circle of people I trust to speak into my life on this level of a decision is very small.
Hmm.
And I have to feel convicted by it, or I'm not going to do it.
Hmm.
And so I think for me, getting the confidence of my wife was huge. Getting the confidence of my dad was huge, and then getting the confidence of a couple close friends
Hmm.
made all the difference. And at that point, then I got to the place where I did have the internal fortitude to say the rest doesn't matter, and and I'm convicted of this now, and so but I did need that push.
Hmm.
Candidly, I needed other people saying, no, this is a good move for you. And now that I'm in the role, figuring out what wins look like, I was a litigator. There was
Right.
a score sheet. I could tell you if I won or lost.
Yeah.
um,
Plaintiff, defendant,
yeah,
respondent, whatever it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, now it's a little bit different. What does a win look like? Well, it might look like mitigating a loss. It might look like landing a big customer. It might look like
Solving a
profitability.
problem. Yeah.
There are so many different wins now that I'm trying to even navigate what that is.
Hmm.
But I think for me, to get back to your core question, getting to a place, giving myself enough time, seeking enough outside counsel, giving myself enough time for prayer and reflection to be convicted by the decision um, allowed me to step into this with more confidence than otherwise would have, and still be able to compete, even from a place of JV status on some of these topics and some of
Yeah.
these job roles.
Have you found other people comment or lack of a better word, I'm not trying to give you credit for stuff, but they're inspired by the fact that you made the move. Have you had people ask you about what it took to make the move?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people. I've had random people reach out and say, "Hey, I looked at your LinkedIn. How did you do that?
Hmm.
Uh, and why did you do that?" Right? Two different questions. And I would say
Yeah.
the how is one. I built a really high level of trust with Unreal CEO Michael,
Hmm.
and we got to know each other, and he got to know me intellectually and my leadership skill set, and saw something that
Yeah.
applying for the same role cold at a different company wouldn't have worked. um, but also being able to say, getting to a place where I was honest with myself enough to recognize what I had wasn't it. Right? That's a hard but also very freeing thing,
Yeah.
because suddenly the world opened. It wasn't just, hey, look for law jobs. It was, hey, if you know this isn't it, what
Yeah.
is? And let's start
Yeah.
exploring what could be. And for me, it was finding something that actually used my skill set a little bit more broadly.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really wonderful fit for that.
When you think, because I think that's key. Well, because I'm thinking to myself, what is it that stops guys, men and women, in that space? Because interestingly enough, your wife actually did a very similar move, right? Specifically about her career, about choices, about what she wanted, very successfully, very sought after, and being like the both of you are doing that. That process of getting to that point of, we call it rigorous honesty, where you're like, it's okay to say I want more. I talk about in the book that I wrote, I talk about the most critical question is, can you give yourself permission to want more than you have? To
Mhm.
believe that you permission to go, it's okay to have outgrown something that was very good, and it doesn't demean it, it doesn't diminish it, but growth is key. I'm going to give myself permission to say, it's okay. I've outgrown the sippy cup of water. I actually need more now. Like in that moment, what do you think holds back people at your stage? Like, what is that fear? Is it just fear? Is there something else that you think gets in the way of, if you think about what got in the way for you, as long as it did, to ask those questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was a few things. Fear for sure. What the unknown, right? I am a control person. I like to be in control. A lot of us are. So the fear was certainly one. Another was comfort.
Mm,
Why upset the apple cart when things are going really
yeah,
well, right? What kind of idiot would do that? Why would I walk away
right.
from a successful career that I was expanding in to pursue something I was much, much less familiar with? So fear, comfort, and insecurity, right? I think fear and insecurity are a little different.
Yep.
And this kind of goes back to, fear for me is like, can I provide for my family? am I going to
Right.
be,
Yeah.
insecurity is a little bit more of, am I even going to be good at this, right? I'm an
Yeah.
expert at this one thing. I don't know if I'm an expert at that because I haven't done it. And
Right.
I'm 13 years into not having tried anything really new. Um, and for me to get over it, I think I had to separate what I wanted materially, professionally. So I knew I wanted a baseline of, I need to be able to provide for my family.
Sure.
But I did need to be able to look at myself and say, wait a minute, you've got skills that aren't being used, right?
Hmm.
So that's the more kind of, I would not necessarily selfish, but it's a more self-focused side of
Yeah.
this of you're going to work every day and you're really good at what you do, and you're using 10% of your skill set,
Yeah.
and that for me, when Sarah asked the question of looking back on your life at age 65, how are you going to feel? That was why I responded, I'll be disappointed, because I
Yeah.
didn't use what I knew I could do, what I knew I was good at, and I just left it on the bookshelf. I just left it there to collect dust, and that would have
Yeah.
really been a bummer.
And that would have been hard. It's so, it's so interesting. And I'd love this is. I'm excited because you can tell you can have a faith conversation that ties into work here on this stuff. Is that so? For me, I grew up in very similar a similar faith tradition as you. I'm a Christian, grew up conservative, and so in some levels, I believe in a God that's in. You have a faith in God that's in control, that has impact in the world. So it's an active God. Was kind of the faith tradition, which on some levels is comforting, and at the same time, it would let me off the hook.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? If I don't do it, God's going to do it. That was it's always kind of been a balance for me. And so it's fascinating. Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book that's very well talked about, I actually quoted in my book that I wrote. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Have you ever talked about before?
Yep.
Yeah. Former psychiatrist who was interned at Dachau and Auschwitz, and he does a big study of what he calls logos therapy or meaning therapy later. But there's a line in his book that just fascinates me that I think plays out to what you're saying in this leaving it on the shelf concept that I found just challenging. And it was that he found that people that really thrived, and again, you've read the book, were ones that I think his words were they believed that, I think he said universe or God, that God had created questions that if they were gone tomorrow would go unanswered.
Hmm.
Is that those who survived anything believed that to die, to not be here, would mean there'd be questions that would go unanswered in the universe because we weren't there to answer them. Because God had created questions that your life was meant to answer. And if you didn't exist, because people would get tied into, oh, my life only has meaning because my kids are alive. Well, if my kids are dead, like they were in these camps, they'd be like, I survived and discovered my family was gone. And they're like, I have no meaning. And you'd say, no, you have to believe that the universe creates questions for you that only you can answer. And what I hear in that, even for you, is somehow that awareness. If it was competition or communication, or just, and mixed with it, obviously it's our faith, it's in there too, that says this is not simply about can I provide, can I do, but there is actually purpose. There's meaning, there's impact, there's creativity, there's modeling for my children something different than they would see anywhere else. And so is your faith the source of that? Is that something that you and Sarah have talked about when you think about vision for you as a couple, not just you as an individual? How does vision and faith kind of coalesce in how you navigate?
Yeah, no, faith is central to it, right? I would like it to be more central than it is, frankly. I mean,
Sure.
I've taken a lot of steps feeling like I was taking them on my own, and in reality, I'm not doing anything on my own. But one of the prayers, probably the most consistent prayer Sarah and I prayed over the last decade as a couple, setting our kids aside and setting health
Yeah.
stuff with family members or whatever. Our most consistent prayer was that if we were where God wanted us to be, He'd give us peace, and if He wanted us to change course, He would stir in discontentment. He would
Yeah.
he would make us uncomfortable. And for the longest time, we felt peace, and we were praying this prayer. We were diligently praying this prayer, and in the last 16 months, we started to feel off about our
Yeah.
professional trajectory, and both very similar at similar times. We both looked at each other and thought, I don't think we're on the right path anymore. Um, so I believe we all have. If we're here, you got purpose.
Yep.
God's given you a
Sure.
purpose. Then that's,
Sure.
and to go back to Viktor Frankl, that's exactly
Yeah.
spot on. You're here for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but to your point about using kind of our faith as the crutch of, well, God's gonna pull the puppet strings and force me to do it,
Attention.
right? If
Yeah.
I don't do it on my own, I also think God allows us to make choices
Yeah.
and be lazy or
Sure.
be selfish or
Hmm.
be afraid or be insecure or fall into these things that I don't think we were designed to live with, but that we do because of this world. And so to get outside of that for us was prayer.
Yeah.
It was leaning into that, and once that discontentment started stirring, it gave me confidence to move on. Move on to what?
Yeah.
At that point, don't know. But I know that this isn't all.
Yeah.
And it feels a little arrogant. And I'm not saying that just for me.
No.
I would say that for everybody,
Yeah.
right? You might be right where God wants you to be, and
Right.
I was for a long time. But he might have something more too, and both
Yeah.
are okay, and both can be
Yeah.
really really great.
Completely. Completely. Because I think the vehicle, because navigation can be about how do I find a way to stay in something because I need to be in that, or my greatest calling is to find a way to redeem a thing, and so it doesn't necessarily mean you make a big move and transition. But I love, again, thinking about communication for you. And again, if somebody's watching at home and the communication, knowing that the choices of career and choices of things you do speak. And so
Mm.
it's saying something about you, and you want people to be impacted by what it says. But also, I think the key piece that you're calling out for me right now is, especially with the relator, is having that trusted voice to play these things off of. Is that the depth of, because it'd be fascinating for you, imagine trying to make this move, but you're single. You don't have a wife or kid. Because even the kids, they can't talk to you about it, but their existence creates something that impacts the choice, right?
Mm.
Sarah is a partner with you. And you guys, I think relators will often, when it comes to navigation, it can get easy to go, I should just make choices about my own life like this. Even, so many married people I talk to are shocked when I say, tell me what the vision of you and your spouse or partner is. Like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, they just want me to be happy. And I'm like, but you're going to do things, they're going to impact them. And I think for relators, like you said, trusted advisors that helped you reframe what a win looks like, even in the process. But I would say so many people, when they start to feel discomfort, they feel they need to fix themselves. For you to have a partner where you're like, mutual discomfort at the same time means we're both hearing the same thing.
Mm.
It matches our prayer. Hey, remember when I think I posted something on this Instagram the other day that said, remember, today's the day you prayed for yesterday. Like the life you have a lot of times. And so having that partnership, that's a trusted voice. And so it'd be interesting that I would say times when you're like, man, I wonder if when things don't feel clear, it might simply be because it's been too long since you guys have had a conversation where you can just relax and be you and talk. I would say disconnection, if you're feeling moments of disconnection, this is how you reverse engineer strengths. It's almost always because, especially for a relator, you just haven't seen the person. Even for you and Michael as employees, like when Michael's on the road and busy and doing, and you guys are crossing, you're like, wait, it's not because just actual FaceTime brings clarity, and you're like, oh, okay, I can read this and I know exactly where we are. And I think relators and navigating, it's so weird because it's not something specific. It's not like your close relationships do something. It's having them to ping against confirms what it is you're choosing or what you want to do different. Does that resonate?
It does, and as you're saying that, I think for me, having Sarah and especially my dad talk through these things, walk through these things, and then provide affirmation, it provides freedom, right? So it helps to eliminate the fear because my fear was primarily based on what am I doing materially. I've got a wife and kids
Hmm.
that I provide for. I've got a
Yeah,
lifestyle. I like to play golf. Like truly, it
sure,
sounds psychotic
sure.
that enters my brain, but it did.
Yeah.
Um, and
Take
so
Fridays off and clients, and you can expense it to the
yeah.
client. Let's go do this.
And so, like, but for them to both provide affirmation after conversation and time in prayer to say, hey, no, this sounds like it could be a really great fit. Then I can then say, take a breath and say, okay, now I'm going to allow myself to go there, right, mentally,
Hmm.
and how does it feel? What do I think? Can I compete and succeed? Um, and so that really provided freedom up until that point. And I don't know what this says about me, but I would have, if those two especially weren't
Yeah,
giving me affirmation, I couldn't move forward.
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That would have been a no go. And again, there are very few people who have that kind of voice in my
Yeah.
life, but they do for sure.
Yeah, relator people with relator typically it's less than five people actually get the right to even speak in. There'll be varying levels beyond that of maybe different things, but relators it's two to three people where you're like, yeah, these are the ones their voice matters ultimately, and the rest may not. When you it's never perfect in those spaces. If you had to tell yourself, if you think through how you navigated that, and the choice to go I have to choose something that isn't about other people's choices. Is there anything that you're looking back that, like, this is the growth for me, that you'd be like, you know what? Next time I have to make a major navigation moment, I've learned that I'm going to do this first. Or this is something that I didn't know I needed, but as I got into it, this was something that either would have accelerated or actually did accelerate my ability to step in. And some of you mentioned, but like, if you're looking back and you can say, because we always say, if you don't know why it works, you can't fix it when it's broken. And so you're like, these were the things I did right. And I would tell myself intentionally, hey, remember to do this when it comes to navigating the future.
Yeah, I think a couple things I did right first. One was, you know, this was a significant move for me. This was also a significant move for our CEO.
Mm,
He said to me at one point, "Look, man, I want a partner in this. I feel like I'm on an island. I need someone who I can run with together." And so, and he's taking a risk hiring a brand and advertising litigator to help run his company.
right. Right.
And for me, I'm leaving a career that's great, that I don't need to leave to
Hmm.
do this. And I think so. One of the things we did right is we took a ton of time, right? We did not rush it. We started talking about this time last year, and I officially joined him in October. So
Yeah.
it was a stretch, a 6 7 month
Yeah.
stretch. I think that was good. I wouldn't have changed that timeline. I think what I would have probably changed a little bit is I am a self confident person, but I doubted when I first started taking on all this
Mm,
information because I hadn't changed careers ever.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
went from law school to my law firm. I'm 37, so that was all I've done.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't trust. I had a couple of my partners before I left when I asked them, "Do you think I'm stupid?" I had a couple kind of laugh and say maybe, but a couple of my most trusted partners said a variation of, "When have you failed at something, like really failed, that
Mm,
you really tried?"
yeah.
And I said, "I don't think ever." And they said, "Why do you think this would be different?" And so I think having a little more confidence in myself and a little more
Yeah.
confidence in my ability to learn,
Yeah.
um, and I think would have helped. I think that has to be paired with humility. I had the
Sure.
humility part because I was freaked out for a while, but I think just looking back and seeing a couple of things. One, God's been faithful, man. I've had such an
Mhm.
amazing ride. I would not have expected going to law school after my failed political efforts. I would not have expected going to a top law school. I would not have expected making partner at a big law firm. I would not have expected marrying the woman that I married, who is
Yeah.
insanely incredible, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so to look back and say, huh, that's 37 years of faithfulness that I can count
Yeah.
on still, and go into it not with arrogance, but a little more confidence that this is going to go well too. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, there's something else out there that
Yeah.
will, and that's that. I got to be okay with that, and I got to be
Yeah.
confident in that. That I would have changed that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is so key. We like to say a lot of times that confidence confidence isn't conjured, it's remembered.
Hmm.
Is that true confidence is actually the remembering of things that have come in the past. It's remembering of things that when it's worked or when you've made it through and you've survived and the ability to step into that and that confidence of going, let me remember. And especially with communication, it's the ability to go, the world is a narrative that where am I in the story of this right now? Let me not forget the story I'm in. Like this is a story, especially for you when it comes to faith. The story, this is a bigger story. How do I, in that moment of perspective, when Sarah's pulling the 65, is that's what's happening? Is that it's leveraging that communication part of you that's going, oh wait, let me remember who I am in this story, because Luke Skywalker becomes Yoda eventually, and we all go there. Like when we figure out the role. I mean, Luke, and so knowing that communication, knowing that it'll make sense right now, it feels a certain way, but as the story unfolds, it'll make sense to me again, and I'll have that for lack of a better word, that zone, that mojo, that ability to be in the flow again once I understand it in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, and on the flip side of the coin too, for me, was remembering I'm not that important. As weird
Yeah.
as that sounds,
No.
it was that provided me an insane amount of comfort to
Yeah.
remember that I am playing a minuscule role in a minuscule part of the world in a grand scheme of things. Like I matter because I'm made in the image of God and I've got a
Sure.
wife and kids and relationships. But at the end of the day, what I do, as long as I'm faithful
Hmm.
to God and my wife
Live that
and
up.
my family, the rest doesn't matter all that much.
Yep.
And that provides me a daily comfort and confidence when I'm doubting what I'm doing or why I'm here, or, what's going on is just a reminder of, to Frankel's point, it's bigger than that. It's bigger
Yeah.
than if you make the right decision on this issue today,
Yeah.
um, and that's provides weirdly comfort for me.
Yeah. And so I think it is to know that, hey, I'm not the only person you're not the only person in the chorus, so to speak. You're not the only person performing in the orchestra. I think there's other parts of that. But I think it takes, yeah, what's so interesting is that fear can often make us, it shrinks our world.
Hmm.
It shrinks our world. My grandmother used to say the devil's special gift is isolation. You think you convince you you're all alone and it's all on you, that suddenly it is all on you.
Yep.
And I meet so many people who like want to make changes in their life and navigate something different, but have drawn this world over. This is a choice that only I can make. There's nothing else. I don't have enough information. And I think the getting space, finding perspective in whatever way, either using strengths or using faith, like your own faith, things that it takes to get perspective of what is the longer story, what I really want. We often say, your vision for what you want to become in your life has to be greater than your four fatal fears or your four survival needs, which is feeling good, looking good, being right, or being in control. And so having a vision of bigger than the second house and retired kids and grandkids becomes bigger than my fear of I don't know how to be a COO.
Yeah.
It overrides that. And I think getting people to that perspective of going, what's it take to actually create that vision? How do you listen to yourself again? Because that's my battle for me is that I'm on a mission for guys your age, specifically 35 to 55, to not stuff that voice that is going, is this really what we wanted?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the realization for me that what I really want might be different than what the success I've experienced. And looking back now at my law career and realizing, oh no, that wasn't a waste of 13 years. There's
No.
it's hugely valuable, and there's a bunch of and not the technical stuff, but
Yeah.
the communication relating, putting myself in courtrooms and in front of federal judges and feeling that pressure, and being with executives and being in these settings has really helped me in this seat now and helping navigate the challenges we're facing. Um, and so, to realize that wasn't wasted time.
Yeah, just because you move on from a thing doesn't mean it wasn't great. And what it was, it simply, it's an outgrown moment. It's ability to grow past it and kind of embrace it in that. What are you doing? And this is my last question. I'll give you back your day, but what are you doing to keep yourself fresh in that space, right? I'm obviously right now, there's so much in the job. So there's a lot of different, I'm sure it's pretty stimulating in that area, but to kind of keep it in front of you of, okay, how am I staying on track or being healthy? Or what are tactics you're finding that you're like, as I found my footing now, after you said, after the first couple of months, you're like, man, I'm starting to find my rhythm. What are things that you're holding on to as habits that you're like, now that I'm finding traction, here's how I'm maintaining it.
Yeah, I think I've identified people within the organization that I need to be in lockstep with on a fairly regular basis. So setting aside time on the calendar with those people who
Hmm.
can help give me perspective because they've been here for 10 years and I've been here for 7 months, or
Yeah.
they've got a really good handle on this market and I don't, or they understand 125% tariffs in China and this is keeping me up at night. Uh,
Right.
I think it's learning to not rely entirely on myself and be
Hmm.
okay being the
Yeah.
rookie in the room, being okay saying, hey, you're really, really good at this, and I am so glad you're here, and I am going to lean into your expertise. So
Yeah.
I've taken that approach both internally and externally. So I use my drive time to listen to podcasts or books that have helped, right? I and that's on the professional side. I'm plugging into Michael, our CEO, who's done this from the ground up,
Right.
and learning from him about all of these technical things and all of the history. And oh yeah, there's an episode of The Office where Jim is running the office and Michael's gone, and Jim tries to combine everybody's birthday into one birthday and celebrate them all at once. And there's absolute chaos in the
Uh,
office, and people are losing their minds, and they get so pissed off. And the scene ends with Jim meeting Michael, I think, on a bench outside, and Jim says, here's what I did, and Michael nods and said, yeah, I tried that a few years ago. Here's how that ended, and same deal.
Try
Like
that before.
people are furious, and so learning that there are people who've done this, gone through
Hmm.
it, leaning into them, using them as sounding boards, identifying the places I'm weak and getting help, identifying the places I'm strong and really leaning into that too,
Yeah.
have all been great. And then practically speaking, trying to sleep.
I'm like, yeah, trying to figure out that. Yeah,
Exercise,
sleep
I
is a
don't
good
know.
thing. You always say avoid being hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Halt. You got to watch out for those things in general.
Trying to turn my phone off. Yeah,
Oof.
all of that. So
Yeah. But your gift, I mean, I mean, Dave, really your gift of, because as a leader, Gallup did one of their books, Strengths Based Leadership, they came back with followers want trust, compassion, stability, and hope. Trust, compassion. That was the big takeaway out of a 20,000 person non-leader survey. And they were like, it's not crazy vision. It's like trust, compassion, stability, and hope. Your ability specifically to have people feel welcomed, understood. And then here's the other part: directly connect their action to the impact of the company because of that achiever relator part is kind of exceptional. One of Gallup's 12 questions on employee engagement is how clearly does your leaders explain your impact to the overall business? It's one of these key questions, and they say it a different way. Your ability to make us feel like we matter to the mission while not losing the measurement of the mission, meaning there's actual outcomes. It's not warm, fuzzy talk. It's not mission statements. Oh, but wait, we didn't hit our number. Your ability to craft the message and make us feel welcome to it while having a specific outcome of look what we produced, like that's what makes us feel led by you. And so anytime you can step in and share that, because like even what you described, oh, people have done this. Instead of like the new COO is going to tell me my job, your ability to make me feel like I'm in collaboration with you, that my
right.
story matters to you, that message, that's always going to be influential. And I think that's a real something you can lean into because just at people will especially go above and beyond to help you because we feel like you care about our opinion
Yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And I was frankly doing that out of necessity, but I'm glad it helps people feel more engaged, and that's fantastic. And Mike, your ability to communicate truth and provide guidance and step back. I mean, you've been such a strong voice in my life. So thank
Thank you.
you. And I mean,
Well, I appreciate that.
I don't know if we've even talked about this. A day or two before I started, I opened my email to an email from you, and it was a document outlining all the things that I should be thinking about starting this new career. And so your thoughtfulness
Yep.
and wisdom have really helped drive my
Hey,
professional and personal life as well. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate that, man. I remember I got into Italy and I was like, this is start day for Dave. And I was like, okay, how do I give him something to dive? Because I'm like, the competition is a whole new game. Let me just give him something. So, man, I appreciate always being supportive. And for those of you following along at home, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please like, follow, share. We'd love to hear comments from you. Any other thoughts? But Dave, so much thanks for being here today. And we'll see all the rest of you another time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching Maps Are Dead. If these conversations are helping you rethink your path, do us a favor. Like, follow, and leave a 5-star review. Helps other people find us and helps others find their way. And if today's episode is hit home, if the map you're following doesn't quite feel right, we've got something for you. We call it the navigation brief. Here's how it works. You send us your top 5 Clifton strengths. We're gonna send you back a custom video with real insights. Where you are, what's holding you back, and how to start moving with more clarity. No fluff, no hype, just truth, direction, and a little shot of momentum. You can sign up at the link in the show notes or in the podcast description. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next episode. Remember, maps are dead, So live courageously.